They said the war was over, but some letters never reached their end. One of them carried a secret that could change the world. The night was silent, the sky heavy with dark clouds, and a faint mist drifted through the narrow streets of a small French village. The sound of a bicycle chain echoed in the still air as Jean, a postman with tired eyes, pedaled slowly home. His bag was almost empty, yet it felt heavier than ever, because one strange envelope refused to leave his thoughts. It had no name, no address, just a German seal and 3 faded characters written on the corner. 27B. Jean stopped under a flickering street lamp. The paper looked old, but the ink was fresh, as if someone had written it recently and sealed it with purpose. He slipped it inside his coat, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling rising in his chest. When he reached his small house, he lit a candle, sat down by the table, and placed the letter near the flame. The light passed through the paper, and faint markings began to appear. Carved deep under the surface, 3 words that made his breath stop. He's alive. Jean's hands trembled. His brother Mark had died 3 years ago on the Berlin front. That was what the military telegram said. Yet here it was, a message claiming he was alive, written in handwriting that looked exactly like Mark's. He tore the envelope open. Inside was an old photograph. Mark standing beside a German officer, both smiling. Behind them, a wall covered in maps. On the back of the photo, 4 words were written, "For the New World." There was also a small folded map showing a bank with a single red mark near its foundation, labeled Gold Reserve Tunnel. Sleep escaped Jean that night. The candle burned low as he stared at the map. The next morning, he got on his bicycle and rode through fog and silence toward the abandoned railway station marked 27B. The place looked forgotten, its roof half collapsed, tracks covered in dust and moss. Jean walked inside, his boots echoing through the empty hall. He searched through old lockers until his eyes fell upon the one marked 27B. It creaked open with a groan. Inside lay a small black ledger covered in dust, with the title Operation Mercury engraved on its cover. Jean flipped through its pages. Numbers, names, coded entries, and one line that froze his blood. Allied gold transfer, estimated value, 300 million francs. He read further. Notes about routes, vaults, and movements of gold between banks, all during the war. Operation Mercury, he whispered. The words felt heavy. It wasn't just about gold, it was about power. If this gold truly existed, whoever controlled it could shape the post-war economy. And Mark's signature was right there on the final page. Before Jean could think further, a cold voice echoed behind him. "You shouldn't have opened that, Monsieur Jean." He turned sharply. A man stood in the shadows, wearing a uniform but no flag, his face calm, his eyes sharp, a pistol in his hand. Jean stepped back slowly. The man spoke again. "Your brother understood something most soldiers never did. The war may end, but money never dies. Guns rust, but gold survives." Jean's pulse raced. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled faintly. "Someone who collects what history leaves behind." Jean threw the ledger at him and ran. Bullets cracked through the air. He jumped through a broken window, landed hard on stone, and rolled into darkness. His torch flickered to life, revealing the mouth of an old tunnel. He crawled inside, his breath loud in his ears, the walls damp and cold. Strange symbols covered the stones carved decades ago. Currency marks, dollar, pound, franc, as if someone had written a warning. Money never dies. The map in his pocket matched the path ahead, leading toward the bank from the photo. He followed it, heart pounding, each step heavier than the last. After what felt like hours, he reached a massive steel door. It was covered in dust and rust, but words still shone faintly. "Trespassers will pay in blood." He hesitated, then looked again at the back of the photo. For small numbers were scratched into the paper. He entered them carefully. As the lock clicked, the door groaned open. A golden glow flooded the space beyond. Mountains of gold bars filled the vault. Crates marked with both Allied and German seals were stacked to the ceiling. In the middle of it all, standing in the glow of the torchlight, was Mark. Jean froze, unable to breathe. His brother turned slowly, his face older, harder, the warmth long gone. "You found it," he said quietly. "I was hoping you would." Jean's voice broke. "They told me you were dead." Mark smiled faintly. Death is only for those who have nothing left to trade. I had gold, and gold is life. Gene stared at him in disbelief. You worked with them, with the enemy. Mark shook his head slowly. No, I worked for the future. The world doesn't run on loyalty, it runs on money. When this war ends, another will begin, not with bombs, but with banks. Whoever controls this gold controls the peace that follows. Zhang felt sick. His brother, the man who once fought for his country, now stood before him as a symbol of greed. Mark stepped closer, lifting a gold bar from a crate. The metal gleamed under the dim light, its surface cold, almost alive. We can share it, Gene, he said softly. You and I can build something new. A fund, a foundation. We can shape the markets before they do. Operation Mercury was never about survival. It was about ownership. This gold is the birth of the next empire. Gene looked down at the bar, its weight pressing against his hand, then at his brother's face, a face he barely recognized. You died the day you chose this, he whispered. He dropped the bar. The sound echoed through the vault like a bell tolling for the dead. Mark frowned. Don't be a fool. Gene, gold is power, gold is freedom. Gene slowly pulled the letter from his pocket, the same one that brought him here, the one that claimed his brother was alive. He looked into Mark's eyes and said, maybe some things should stay buried. He struck the lighter. The flame caught the edge of the letter, and the fire spread like a living thing, crawling across the floor toward the leaking fuel pipes. The blast ripped through the tunnel, swallowing gold, greed, and guilt in one blinding moment. The next morning, Allied soldiers found the ruins. Smoke rose from the collapsed tunnels. Among the rubble, they discovered a half-burned envelope, its edges blackened, yet one line still visible beneath the ash. You finished what I couldn't? Emma soldier read it aloud and said quietly, maybe some debts can't be paid with money. Another replied, or maybe money was the reason they were owed in the first place. Months passed. The war ended. Nations celebrated peace. But peace has its own currency. In Paris, a new investment firm appeared, Mercury Trust Holdings. No one knew who owned it, but its profits rose faster than any in history. Some whispered it was funded by the same gold from Operation Mercury. Others said a man survived the blast, a man with a scar and a secret. Years later, a quiet postman delivered an envelope to the Mercury Trust headquarters. It was blank inside, nothing but one faint line written in pencil, gold never dies. They thought the war ended with guns, but the real war had just begun. One fought not on battlefields, but in banks. Subscribe to uncover the next secret from the shadows of history.